master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and in today's episode, we're talking about how to grow beyond six figures using gratitude as a strategy. Now, believe it or not, the law of diminishing returns doesn't apply to being grateful, meaning it's impossible to practice too much gratitude so long as it's sincere. So as long as I'm in the moment, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to Technically Speaking. We really appreciate your company. Okay, so what does this have to do with growing an expert business? Everything. And to talk about this, we invited on employee engagement and retention expert Lisa Ryan. Now, Lisa's programs focus on positive workplace culture, intergenerational communication, employee acquisition, engagement retention, and gratitude strategies, Grategies, for personal and professional development. And today she's sharing with us how to use gratitude as a strategy to grow your expert business beyond the six-figure mark, because she's done the exact same thing. So what's not to love about that? As always, stick around until the end for some awesome resources, and we hope you enjoy this one. We'll see you in there. All right, and we are live. Lisa, it is awesome to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, for sure.
So great to have you. And your cool background, by the way. We were just talking about this before the show, but
taking notes.
Yep. If any of you guys need a cool virtual background, turns out Lisa's the person to talk to because it is awesome. For those of you just listening, you're missing it.
Yeah,
Pop over
it's
to
not
YouTube,
green
check it out.
screen, people. Not green screen.
And it's not a real wall either, which is crazy. So
yeah, it's amazing.
Nice plug for the video, by the way, Austin. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Yep.
All right. So, Lisa, we brought you on for a very special reason for this episode. And it's kind of around your core kind of subject of gratitude. But it's more importantly how you've kind of leveraged that and your whole philosophy about gratitude and what you teach others and to building a successful business, an expert business, speaking, training, coaching, and the gamut. So thank you again for coming on today. We're really excited to unpack some of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So what was funny though is we like to do our research a little bit before every episode. So just kind of get in the weed. Yeah, I know the internet is powerful.
That is the appropriate response.
Yeah, that's usually the thing we get. But we saw on your site that you can weld.
Yes, I can.
That's a pretty cool thing.
Yep.
So a couple questions: how and why, and what's your favorite project that you've worked on?
I've actually. I was in welding consumables. I had a 25 plus year sales career, and part of that was in industrial sales, which is why my speaking background or my speaking business really focuses on manufacturing. But in the welding industry, I sold a maintenance engineered line of welding rod, which basically means a lot of your welding products are designed for clean, flat surfaces, where mine were designed to reduce downtime. So welding through grease and dirt and oil and stuff. But I loved the industry and I loved going into auto plants and steel mills. I got to go into the salt mine. So I was like a mile below Lake Erie and 4 miles out, which is a little terrifying when you realize you have a lake as your ceiling. But
my goodness.
I loved welding so much that I actually took 4 quarters of welded art. So I would sell welding all week. And then on the weekend, I would go to this class and the instructor and I would hang out for like 4 hours afterwards. And we would just play in the weld shop. So probably my favorite of my creations, I just call the Bug. And he is about a 4-foot tall praying mantis. He's got a beautiful copper back that I colored using flame. I mean, he's just beautiful, rebar and all kinds of stuff. I have all of my art. There's a folder on my Facebook page called Lisa's Welded Art. So if you ever wanted to go and check out what I've done, I did a Cocopelli wine rack. I've done all kinds of things, but the Bug is definitely my favorite because I got about 60 hours into him.
60 hours. Wow.
That's amazing. And 4 feet tall. I mean, that's a pretty substantial size praying mantis.
He's big. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, so cool. I have
Wow.
such respect for that craft. Like it
Yeah.
is amazing. One of those people that will like watch YouTube videos of like, I think they call them dime welds and like all these
Ugh.
really cool, intricate things that people, it's amazing.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. When I go to Lincoln Electric has a welding school way out east, and they have different welds from contests, and you just look at that and they are works of art in themselves because you're just looking at this going, because I know what it took to be able to
Yeah.
create a bead that's that beautiful.
Holy
Well,
cow.
it's kind of amazing. Welding is like one of those things where you're using a medium that's so tough, like metal, but it's such an intricate thing. And so it straddles this line between like durability and finesse. And there's just not that many things out there that do that. So
Yeah.
respect,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
For sure.
Super cool. So how did you segue that from like the selling and manufacturing into what you do now? When did the whole kind of idea of, gratitude as a subject come up for you?
Well, the funny thing is when I was in the welding industry, I was their corporate computer trainer. So I got used to doing 8-hour training classes. When you think about the average age at that time, and this was, the late 90s to early 2000s, the average age in the industry was 58. So I would
Oh,
have to go and teach these guys primarily who had never even learned how to turn on a computer, why they should take their laptop into the field to do welding demonstrations instead of carrying around their 6-inch wide binder with a leather handle. So that got me into training. And then I'd go into my clients and customers and do, oxyacetylene safety training and that type of thing. And then when the economy crashed in the early 2000s here in Cleveland, and I went into healthcare, and I was selling surgical gloves and HIPAA and, into the surgical environment. I started doing continuing education programs for nurses and surgical techs on exciting products like hand hygiene, double gloving, occupational asthma, latex allergies, all the really fun stuff. Actually, hand hygiene is coming back to haunt us now.
yeah, isn't it?
It sure is.
But
Should have taken that more seriously.
yeah, but in the 7 years I was there, I did more than 500 continuing education classes, and I
Wow.
discovered the National Speakers Association along the way, thinking that, this would be a fun thing to do. I really didn't know that speaking was a business, nor did I know what I wanted to speak about, because being in sales, that's not what I wanted to speak about. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until I started keeping a gratitude journal as a practice with 3 of my friends that we just, after a 4-day conference that we went to and did a fire walk, the big Tony Robbins thing, that we knew that we wanted to keep that momentum going that we had with 4 days with Tony. So we opened up a Facebook thread and we shared, experiences that we had, people that we met, things we learned. And then one of my friends said, well, why don't we write down 3 things we're grateful for? And we shared with each other every day. We held each other accountable. And when I started seeing the results of that in a very short time, I knew to the core of my being that that's what I was supposed to talk about. So it was
Wow.
like, the funny thing is, I started my speaking business and it was going to be all about gratitude and creating a culture, a workplace culture of appreciation, until one of my friends kind of patted me on the arm and said, nobody's ever going to pay you for that, right? Because it was, 2010 and they weren't. So I actually changed the language to employee engagement because that was marketable.
That's right.
And the funny thing is that, 10, 11 years later, however long it's been now, is that I actually get booked. It's about 50-50. I get booked just as often for pure gratitude as I do employee retention. And when you think about my market, it's manufacturing and I'm teaching them about gratitude. So it's something that relates to us on such a personal, connected level that people get it. And it doesn't matter the industry that you're in, because that's what we want to bring in our lives.
Oh, man, that is so cool and such a powerful thing. And honestly, like there is some futurist stuff happening there because
Yeah.
today, like we're seeing the great resignation happening. And one of the key reasons that people are attributing that is a lack of
Lack
feeling
of
meaning and
engagement.
Yeah.
appreciation inside of the workplace. Like, so I think you are on the cutting edge of this, and probably you're extremely valuable as we're trying to navigate the new world that you're in.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I have to point out, very cool that like you took this thing that you do, which is this love and appreciation, no pun intended, for what gratitude can do for an individual in a business, but you still niched it down,
That's right.
despite the fact that it could be anybody on this planet can benefit from having more gratitude in their life, I can imagine. But you really chose to just continue applying it to the sector that you already were built into, and that's probably contributed to the success that you've had. Obviously, you're a very well accomplished speaker, so props there. There's probably some conversation for us to have, but I do want to sort of double back into
Sure.
this like era that we're in right now, where companies are seeing scourges of people leaving, and I don't know if anybody really has answers. In fact, on your website we saw that like
Mhm.
there's a stat: 64% I think of people leave an organization because they don't feel appreciated.
Yep.
Like, why do you think that is? Can you speak a little bit more to that phenomenon?
Well, when people feel connected to an organization, they stay. I mean, this is not taking money off the table because you have to pay people a marketable wage. And particularly now, as we are going to see salaries and hourly wages going up just because of what we've gone through in the last 19 months. And people realize that, hey, if I can make 28 bucks an hour collecting unemployment for a year, I'm certainly not going back to your $8 an hour job. But that's,
Yeah.
completely beside the point. And and you know what? I got totally off. I just
Oh,
blanked for a minute there. So go back to what
Oh,
you
it's
asked
okay.
me.
We'll go back.
oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I was just talking about the Great Resignation and
Oh
like
yeah.
how this.
Yeah.
Appreciation and
Right.
Yep.
And that's it, that people are looking at, do I feel valued? Do I want to stay here? And the funny thing is that my husband was part of that. He was laid off for 8 months last year. And then the only reason why he really got called back is that his boss quit and he was the only one with cost accounting experience to go back. But his company did a lot of the right things on paper. They would take everybody to Cedar Point amusement park in the summer, and they had, for St. Patrick's Day, they would bring in corned beef and cabbage for the entire shop and all this cool stuff. But the day to day never said thank you, never showed
Mm.
appreciation. Nothing Scott ever did was correct. I mean, and it was just, and he was there for 13 years. And so even though after he got called back to work, all the work that we had done while he was laid off with updating his LinkedIn profile, he was still, getting dings from people and, hey, are you looking? And the day before his 60th birthday, my husband took a job with another company and they are amazing. Scott's probably the oldest guy that works there, you know, but, he has the flexibility that his last company had nothing to do with flexibility. You are coming back to the office. And it wasn't for any other reason aside from the fact that because we don't trust that you're actually going to work. And that was
Yeah.
very apparent. Where with his company now, and Scott loves going to the office. So, living in Cleveland, if we have a bad snow day, he can work from home. But just the flexibility that's there if he wants it. And he
Yeah, the
feels
choice.
connected. And like when the guy that retired, that hit the position was created because of him, they took the entire accounting department out to Cheesecake Factory to celebrate. In 13 years, Scott's other company hadn't done that. So it's just these little things that we pay attention to, that Scott would have taken a pay cut to join them. Thankfully, he didn't have to, because they know, as an organization, as much time and effort as they put into bringing him in and getting to the point of making an offer, they didn't want to come in and basically at less money than he was making. But from my own standpoint, I was in medical sales and, I had a six-figure job. And, I was like, there's no way that I can ever work for less than $100,000 a year. until I started my speaking business and starved for 4 years.
Can we get an amen, people?
Yeah,
Can
amen.
we, yeah, go in there.
And I thought my husband would be like, "Oh, girlfriend, you are going back to work." But we also have that whole little happy wife, happy life thing. And it was so apparent to me that when you're happy, you work for a lot less money than you think you need. And the way to feel connected and appreciated is people catching you in the act of doing things well, of thanking you for being here, of thanking you for doing your job, of listening to you, of investing in your personal and professional development. All of these little things that are saying, as an employer, I am investing in you because I value and appreciate you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man, I
man,
love
this
that.
is so powerful. There's something ringing in the back of my head though. Um, is it ever overdone?
No,
Gratitude. Can you like ever like say thank you too
no.
much? Is there ever a limit? No, you answer that pretty quickly. Do you want to break
Yeah.
that down for?
Well,
I
you
think
know
some
what?
people hear that and they're thinking about like all the people around them they could be expressing gratitude,
Well,
to more
insincere
regularly.
gratitude. I tell the
Sincere,
people
okay.
in my programs, I'm like, if you think this Lisa Ryan woman is telling you to go out and thank 5 people there
That's
and
right.
thank
Yeah,
you,
right.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
That's not
check,
what this means.
check, and it's a check mark, then yeah, absolutely. But I was actually speaking at an event, and Mike Byam from Terryberry was there. And Terryberry is an employee recognition company. They do a lot with that. And in Mike's program, he actually presented research that they did that showed that you cannot overthank if that thankfulness
Wow.
is sincere. So, what that means is that I am not saying, "Hey, Austin, good job." And Austin's like, "Well, what was so great about it? I have no idea what I did." But if I say, Austin, the way that, you set up the podcast before and your attention to detail and the sound check and everything that you do to make our time together successful, I just really appreciate your doing that. Now, Austin knows that as his boss, that I'm paying attention. Oh, I didn't mean to make you cry.
Take
but
all the credit, Austin.
but and the funny thing is that when it comes down to, we can have fun in the workplace, joking around with everybody. But one of the things, and I remember there was a guy, he came up to me after one of my programs, and he had just started working at a big box store. And, he had been there for about 6 weeks, and he got one of those kudos letters because he just went above and beyond and he served, served, served. And, and at their weekly meetings, I guess what they would do is they would read these kudos letters to show. And again, what a great way to show recognition, to catch people in the act of doing things well. So his boss got up and, and this kid is like all proud and everything. The next manager that got up, the first words out of his mouth was, "Yeah, nice letter from your mother." He was gone.
Wow.
He was
Yikes.
gone 6 weeks later. So
Wow.
it's just these little things that we can do. So when you're sincere and when you're specific, and
Mm.
even in the employees that are not your rock stars, they're not your problem children. I just call them the steady eddies. They just show up, they do their job. They're not on either end of the spectrum, just that kind of glue that keeps the organization together. But if you can focus on them and say, and again, catch them in the act of doing things well, being specific, they might be like, "Wow, that felt pretty good. How do I get me some more of that?" And now you're giving them the tools that they need to move into rock star status instead of, you think the problem children, that bottom 20%, they're looking for their recruits in that middle 50% of the people who are basically just disengaged, doing as much work to get by so they don't get fired.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how much people can feel motivated and inspired when they feel like they're plugged into a process. They're actually making an impact. Like going back to the whole Great Resignation thing, we just had a conversation last week with Irvin Nugent, who's an emotional intelligence person, and he was pointing out that feeling of belonging and meaningfulness as it relates to the work that we're doing is a big deal, and that starts by being told how it is that you fit into things and
Right.
how you're making an impact. And
Mhm.
so I love that. And I'm curious too, because we're talking about this primarily through the lens of how we're showing appreciation for an organization, right? But I know a lot of the people that are listening to this are running businesses like yours, right? But lean teams, usually there's maybe not a gigantic infrastructure behind it. It's because there's an expert that's running the thing. So, like, from your own perspective, running your own personal business, like, how have you applied some of these principles to help you become more successful?
Well, I have been keeping a gratitude journal since 2009. I mean, in the morning, every morning before my feet hit the ground, I reach under my bed because that's where I keep my gratitude journal. And my gratitude journal is nothing more than loose leaf paper in a binder. I mean, as a
Nice.
person who actually has written a gratitude journal and talks about it, mine's probably the ugliest journal on the planet. It doesn't matter. I take those first couple days or couple days, yeah, a couple minutes in the morning and set the expectation. Number one, by acknowledging the things that I'm grateful for, but also being grateful in advance. And it's
Mm.
funny how that works because sometimes I'll write and I'll try to create things to happen. Like I'll write down, I'm grateful for checks in the mail. Well, yesterday I
Amen.
wrote down, I'm grateful for checks in the mail. And guess what I got in the mail? On Monday, I wrote down that I'm grateful for, and it was, I forget if it was closing two speaking gigs or a speaking gig out of the blue, because sometimes I just get the feeling and that's what I write because I want to create that. And sure enough, I closed two speaking gigs and one of them was from a company I had never heard of before. And they just
Awesome.
found me and there wasn't even a question. It's like, okay, we're going to hire you. This is what we have. Send us a contract. Okay, cool. know?
That's great.
Um,
Wow.
but it's that expectation. And I will tell you, with the last 20 months that we've gone through with the pandemic, this is not to say that it was happy, happy, joy, joy, because a year ago this month, January of 21, was probably one of the darkest times that I've gone through because it just
Mhm.
felt like it was never going to end.
Yeah,
And
how'd you find gratitude in that?
I was like, I'm in Cleveland. It was January. The sun's out. I'm grateful the sun's shining.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm grateful to spend time with my husband. I'm grateful to, and I
Yeah.
was doing, and then I, um, I just had this feeling that, what, I got to get a job. I got to do something. And I came downstairs, and on LinkedIn, there was a local company that was looking for an independent contractor to basically be a producer for their trainers to hang out in the chat room on Zoom and Adobe Connect calls. And I got the job. And and I do that maybe, well, I haven't done it lately because I think they've gone back to in person programming. But, it's like these little things that get you through. It's just we look for the good because when you look for the good, you can always find it, and
Mhm.
there's also times to just give yourself permission to wallow, you know?
That's
But
true.
as
Yeah,
long
to
as you don't
grieve.
get stuck, if you're gonna have a pity party, make it a really good pity party, but also say, "My party's ending at midnight, and tomorrow I go back to finding the good." And if you can't find 5 things that are you can be grateful for, find 1. Find
Mhm.
1
Yeah.
as the rawness of that emotion of depression and anger and frustration and all the things that we've all been going through the last year, make a point to find one thing. And then the
Yeah,
next day, maybe it gets a little bit easier to find the next.
I
Man, that's
like
so
that.
practical. Anybody can do that. Anybody listening to this can make space to find one thing that they're grateful for,
Yeah,
even on the roughest days. I really believe that. And something that you just mentioned here, like, I believe that we do create our reality. The way that we perceive the world has an impact on the experiences that we have. And like whether or not there's some metaphysical thing at play there, I don't know. I'm certainly not smart enough to know, but I do know that I forget the actual name of the psychological principle, but you buy a car and then you see that car all over the place.
right,
Like it's
right.
because we're
Yeah.
The
raising our
reticular activating
mindfulness.
system.
Thank you.
All
Yes,
right. Don't feel bad
exactly.
about not remembering that, Austin.
Oh no, I said I'm dumb. I believe that. But yeah, like I think that even just by writing down the things that we're grateful for, it helps us be more aware of those things that happen in the day. Like probably those checks that came in the mail were going to come no matter what.
Mhm.
But when they came, you probably felt a lot more grateful for it because you had already like set the intention
Yeah.
that you were grateful for it, right? So I think even just being more mindful of the things that we have the ability to be grateful for means that we'll be more appreciative of those things. Truly, we'll feel that when they do arise instead of just letting them come and go like probably a lot of us do every day without even thinking about it.
Right, right. And we tend to focus on, the really good things. We tend to focus on the really bad things, just like we do with employees in the workplace. But it's the day to day
Mhm.
that's the practice of being grateful that, it's 18 degrees outside, but it is 70 in my house. You know, that
Yeah.
I have, two cats that I'm surprised Tinkerbell hasn't walked in here lately. But so we take a look at the day to day that we can otherwise completely take for granted, and that's what
Mhm.
keeps us in the practice because that's what gratitude is. And writing it down, I have what now 12 years worth of journals that I can go through, and you just kind of see the ebbs and flows in life, because a lot of times it's not happy, happy, joy, joy. But on the other hand, I also notice that there have been times that gotten out of the habit. My travel schedule gets all crazy or whatever happens, and I just don't feel as good. I'm like, "What is going on?" And it's like, "Oh, got away from gratitude." As soon as
Mm.
I get back to gratitude, it's like things just flip and start getting better. So it's always there. And it's always something that you can do like as a couple with your kids to just instead of saying, "How was your day today?" Because little Johnny's going to be like, "Well, Billy was mean to me." Tell me one good thing that happened today. Get into the habit of looking for the good. And for me, my husband's an accountant. He is not into all this self development, professional development, gratitude stuff. But the fact that I kept the journal, it impacted our marriage. So it
Mm.
really even only has to be one person, one-sided. And Scott and I celebrated, 25 years last year and it was,
Wow.
and the thing is, and
That's
it's 25 years of that were good years, not just
Yeah.
celebrating the tenure. you know?
Sure.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So I think a lot of people like they hear these and it seems sort of intuitive, right? Like we all know how to express gratitude, but I think sometimes like we get in our heads about how to do that effectively.
Mhm.
So I'd be curious for you, like when it comes to expressing gratitude externally to your husband, to your coworkers, to your employees, to the mailman, like whoever it may be, do you have like a formula that somebody can plug into to help them be more confident in expressing gratitude without having to think through the right words to say?
There's a couple schools of thought with that. And it boils down to two different ways to do it. Thank you for and thank you because. So
Oh.
thank you for is thank you for dinner, thank you for the gift, thank you for the time you spent with me. So it's narrowing down to one thing. Or a couple things. Thank you because is these are the reasons that I am grateful for you.
Mm.
So the more effective of the two of them is the thank you because. I tell people in my programs, number one, I talk about my 30-day challenge of just uh, you know, to keep a gratitude journal for 30 days. Now, I used to do an official 30-day challenge, which was really funny because at the end of it, people would write me and say, "I'm so sorry that the gratitude challenge ended. I really enjoyed it." I'm like, part of my evil plan was for you to keep going.
Keep
You
doing it. Yeah,
know,
right?
just keep going. But it's building these little habits like that. And keeping it going that really makes that difference.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I like that formula too, the thank you for and thank you because.
Yeah, and then
I
and
don't I think
the
that gave me a picture.
yeah, and the other thing I was gonna say is, think of somebody that needs to hear from you. Just say, "Okay, who
Mm,
needs to hear
nice.
from me today?" And somebody pops into your head and you're like, "Well, I have no idea." You know what? That's a really good note, a good reason for a thank you because letter. I had
Nice.
one of my clients that would go to the post office every month and get a sheet of stamps. And her goal was to use that sheet of stamps to send out thank you notes. I use
Wow.
send out cards. So for me, it's really
Yeah.
easy. If I'm at an event where I'm speaking, I take a selfie with the meeting planner and then I upload that card into send out cards. And that's how I send my thank you notes. So,
Genius.
you look at the way that you can personalize the experience and show gratitude in a way that is different from what they're getting from everybody else.
Wow. And with that, folks, that is the thing to write down. Express gratitude in a way that is truly yourself. It's personalized to your people. It's really intentional. Lisa, you are a wealth of knowledge. I feel like we could talk about this forever. So thank you for coming on and exposing us to all these different frameworks. And I do that. I love these shows because we learn so much. So thank you for providing so much value. If somebody wants to learn more or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure, they can go to my website, which is
Cool.
lisaryanspeaks.com. I'm also really active on LinkedIn. And I know there's a gazillion Lisa Ryans on LinkedIn, so just look for the one from Grategy. you know?
Nice.
But I am always posting videos and resources and my podcast interviews and that type of thing on LinkedIn. So for the most current and up-to-date stuff that I'm doing, that's the best. Just write me a note that lets me know that you heard me on the show, and I am more than happy to connect.
All right. Awesome. Well, hey, we'll make sure a LinkedIn link is in the show notes. So definitely go check that out. Definitely follow Lisa for all of those awesome updates. And hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. If you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources. Thank you so much for chiming in. I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Auxbus. Auxbus is the all-in-one suite of tools you need to run your podcast. And it's actually what we run here at SpeakerFlow for Technically Speaking. It makes planning podcasts simple. It makes recording podcasts simple. It even makes publishing podcasts to the masses simple. And quite honestly, Technically Speaking wouldn't be up as soon as it is without Auxbus. Thank you so much, Auxbus. And if you are interested in checking Auxbus out, whether you're starting a podcast or you have one currently, get our special offer, auxbus.com/speakerflow, or click the link below in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.